I have one child. I will not be having any more, and I would like to talk about it. By the way, I'm KJ Miller. I am a founder, lecturer, and content creator. I love talking about all things pop culture, business, beauty, and apparently parenthood. If you like any of that, be sure to subscribe. Now, let's get into it. Okay, so first and foremost, let's address the obvious. I'm not in my usual spot. I am in my hotel room in Los Angeles. I'm here for work, but I'm still making content because I love y'all. That's number one. The other thing to go ahead and get out of the way is I have spoken about this before on social media. I don't know if I've spoken about it on YouTube though. And so I'm now prepared to give kind of my longer thesis around why I'm a parent of one, happily a parent of one, why I strongly recommend it if that is what you want for yourself, and my thoughts on some of the discourse around being a parent of one. And I will just say all of this kind of kicked off again for me. It's something I've spoken about before, as I've said, but I came back to the conversation because I saw a post this week from a creator who basically said moms of one are it girls. And I loved that framing, and I loved a lot of the points that this creator made. So I am going to play it for you just so you have the context and see, where I'm coming from when we start this conversation. So this creator's handle is I am Professor Bay, which makes me think she's a professor. Go girl, me too. Hey. Well, I'm a lecturer. Let me be clear. Professors actually go and get the PhD and do the things. I don't have a PhD. I do have an MBA. I do teach business school, but I cannot claim the professor title. But a lot of my students do call me Professor Miller. That's neither here nor there. Let's go ahead and watch her video.
Moms of one are truly it girls. Like they truly embody the it girls of motherhood. And they almost get the same amount of societal pressure as women who choose to remain child-free. But it's a little bit different because moms of one chose motherhood and they also choose themselves. Moms of one still have room for autonomy over their life. They still have room for rest. They still have room for ease. And people don't like that. And one thing I know is that if you're a woman, people hate when you have freedom. And if you couple that with motherhood, they really hate it because as a mom, you're not expected to have freedom. Like you're expected to struggle. You're expected to submerge yourself into motherhood and you're expected to lose your identity. But when you only have one child, it's like the perfect balance. You can still be a mother and then you can still pour into yourself and you can focus on yourself. And don't let you be a single mama with one child and you got some money and y'all are thriving. Oh, they really hate that because
now, if that was not a word, I know y'all saw me in the corner nodding and taking additional notes because it touched me the first time she said it. It touched me this time. It is a word. And I just want to go really through the major points of her thesis here because she was speaking. All right. Shout out to I am Professor Bay. She doesn't put her formal name in her title, or else I would shout out herself. She just puts I am Professor Bay here. And her bio says life lectures and education, the It Girl Mom Club. Go girl. I love when someone speaks a word onto me and into my life. But let's take her points one by one, okay? So I'm going to go through her points, give my thoughts, then I'm going to give some of my own general thoughts, okay? But let's start with what she says here. The first point she makes is, and I deeply agree, moms of one almost face the same amount of societal pressure as child-free women. I agree with that because I will say there is an expectation once you decide to have kids that you are going to have kids, plural, right? When you have one child, oftentimes the next question is, so when are you going to give her a sibling? I get that a lot, particularly from some of my older family members. When are you going to give her a sibling? But I've also gotten it from friends and I've also gotten it from strangers, right? There is this idea that once you're on the path of having children, obviously you would have multiple children. Like you've made You've made the choice, right? Like having one kid is like eating one potato chip. Oh, we're eating the chips, so don't reach your hand in the bag of Doritos and just have one. That's insane. Similarly, some people think if you're going to have a child, why wouldn't you have two or three? You're already here. And what is so absolutely insane to me about that is having kids doesn't scale like the way other things do. It's not like, oh, I already have one, so the second one is going to be infinitely easier. Are there things that you learn after you've had one that will make having more easier? Absolutely. I'm not saying there's no like learning curve. I'm not saying you can't apply the lessons from the first child to the subsequent children. Of course you can. And you will if you make that choice. But a lot of raising a child doesn't even come down to what you know. Let's be very serious. A lot of raising a child just comes down to the nuts and bolts of the day in and the day out. The changing the diaper, the waking up in the middle of the night, the breastfeeding, or in my case, endlessly breast pumping, because I exclusively breast pumped. Is that what they call it? Exclusively pumped? There's a phrase. Anyway, the point is I was hooked to a pump every 2 hours for the first 4 months of my child's life. There's just the nuts and bolts. It doesn't matter if I've done it before. I don't get to now speed up through pumping or speed up through breastfeeding. No, you just got to do it. Doesn't matter that you've done it before. You still have to change a dirty diaper every however many hours when that child is first born. Doesn't matter if you've done it before. You still have to go through postpartum depression if that is in fact how your body chemistry works after the baby is born, right? Like the nuts and bolts of caring for a child. Yes, you can bring the lessons you've learned into raising the subsequent child. Of course you can, but that doesn't change anything about the tedious labor of raising a child. Nothing about that decreases upon having the second child. And so when people act as if, oh, you had one, so why not have another? That quite simply does not make sense. It does not make sense. Okay. Don't let somebody convince you it does. Unless it makes sense to you. If it makes sense to you, great. Okay. To be clear, I'm not trying to talk anyone in to being a mom of one or out of being a mom of many. I'm simply trying to give my experience, my perspective as someone who has one child and is not planning on having any more. Do with it what you will. Okay. But it just, this idea that like, once you're on the path, you might as well keep going. It just doesn't hold any water with me, none whatsoever, because I know all of the things that I did, I have to do again. I'm coming with more knowledge, but I'm not coming with more hours in the day. Hello? I'm not coming with more hands. More feet, more toes, more fingers. I still have what I have and another child. So however much easier it's supposed to be because I have the knowledge from before, I have the stress of today because I am still raising another human who is fully reliant on me. My child is 4 years old. She is phenomenal in every way. She's the most brilliant 4-year-old I've ever met. And she still relies on me and her father for everything. Okay. And I'm happy about that. I'm sure when the day comes where she no longer needs us, I will weep. All right. But the fact is she does need us. And so I am actively taking care of her every day. So adding on another child, no. This doesn't scale the way people are trying to convince you it scales. It just does not. All right. And I've seen people do it enough to know it doesn't mean that people aren't happy with the second one. My friends who have multiple kids are very happy. They're very happy. I'm not trying to say you're not happy. I'm just trying to say this idea that like, if you have one, you might as well have another. Let's just really be realistic about what it looks like to have another. It looks a lot like having the first, but in many ways harder because you still got the first. They didn't go anywhere. They're still there. They still need you. And so that's why, to me, this societal pressure that exists to, once you're on the train having children, to have more children, just, it doesn't even break into my brain, because one thing about me, I'm logical. So if you're coming to me with something that is illogical, it doesn't even penetrate. It really doesn't. It doesn't even break through. Okay. I think rationally. And so if it don't make sense, it don't make sense. And to me, most of the arguments people make with regards to once you're already on the path, stay on the path, those arguments don't make sense. A good reason to have another child is that you really deeply want another child. That's a good reason to have another child. A bad reason to have another child, in my opinion, is, oh, well, you already have one, so you might as well keep going. I'm going to swerve right onto the left from that. Okay, let's move on to Professor Bay's next point, where she says, and I love this, part of the reason people dislike moms of one is because if you're a mom of one, you chose motherhood, but you also chose yourself. Ooh, girl, don't hit me with a sermon on a Wednesday night. Listen, this is the crux for me. This is the crux for me. This is why I'm doing a deep dive into her TikTok. I know she didn't make this TikTok thinking someone was going to do a deep dive, but girl, I'm going to do it because you were really speaking a word. This for me is the crux. I have chosen motherhood. I love that choice. I love my daughter with my whole heart. I would jump in front of a train for her. No, without a second thought. Okay. I want to be clear about that. I have chosen her, and I have chosen myself. I have chosen my career. I have chosen my interests. I have chosen my passions. I have chosen my husband. I have chosen vacations. I have chosen to build a life that is fulfilling to me outside of the life I lead as her mother. I have chosen both. And there are a lot of people who hate that, who feel like once you choose to be a mom, that's the choice. That's the most important choice. That's the choice that takes priority. And, that's the choice above all else. And it doesn't even really make sense to say you choose your child and you choose yourself, because choosing to have children puts you immediately in a selfless place. And I'm not saying I'm not more selfless than I used to be. I am. I put my child's needs and desires before mine all the time. You have to, because she didn't choose to be here. And she does rely on me. So I put her needs first all the time, but I still choose me in a way that I know I would not be able to if I had more kids. Again, you might be different. You might feel like you are able to choose yourself just as much with 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids, 5 kids. I don't know your life. I know my life. And I know if I had more kids, I would have to put myself in the back seat more often. I would have to feel like I cannot continue to choose myself in the ways that I need to choose myself. And there will be people who call that selfish. And I'm okay if that's what you call it. I disagree with that, but call it what you want. Okay. The point is, for me, I know that in order to even be good at taking care of my child, I can't completely lose myself. I have to be able to still choose myself. And so having one child enables that. And it's that choice, choosing her and choosing me, that I think a lot of people get mad at. I think a lot of people feel like moms shouldn't be able to do. But I fully and completely disagree. And I offer that up in case there are people who feel like, oh, I'm supposed to have more kids. Why? Like, let's challenge that thinking. Who said that? Who said that to you? And why do you believe them? Why should anyone else and what they think about parenthood in any way affect how you feel? Because are they going to help raise those kids? Okay, let's move on to Professor Bay's next point. She says, and see, this is where she really started preaching, y'all. She said, moms of one still have room for autonomy, still have room for rest, still have room for ease, and still have room for freedom. Again, I want that to sink in, because this is what I fear we are told as women and as moms we should give up. Autonomy for sure. Autonomy? Why would you think that you should have any autonomy when you're raising an entire child who relies on you? Why would you think you should be able to rest? Why would you think there should still be ease? You know, there is a quote in Working Moms. I don't know if you've seen that show, but it's one of my favorite quotes. I've never forgotten it from the moment I heard it, where the main character says, parents with one child have clean hair and brunch plans. And hello, true. First of all, me, my husband, and my child, we go to brunch almost every weekend. But also, me and my husband go to brunch by ourselves all the time. Because you know what's not hard to find? Someone willing to watch one child. Do you know what is hard to find? Someone willing to watch 3 children. So my husband and I still go on dates. We go on solo vacations, just the 2 of us, and we go to brunch, just the 2 of us, and we go to brunch with my child. You know what's easier to manage at brunch? 1 child. You know what's harder to manage? 2 children, 3 children, 8 children. Some of y'all are having a whole lot, and no shade at all. I love that for you if you love it for yourself, but I still have ease. I still have freedom, and I still have rest. And all of those things, again, for me, are possible because I've got 1 child. Do you hear what I'm saying? Are you hearing me in the back? Okay. Now, I want to get into sort of how she wraps up, and then I'll just get into some of my overarching thoughts here. She says, when you are a mom, you are expected to struggle and submerge yourself in motherhood. You're expected to lose yourself and your identity. But when you've got 1, you can still pour into yourself. Ooh. I'm sorry, but this is such a word. I really and truly do feel like I see this. And so much of this is societal norms here in America. I do think because of this bullshit patriarchal society we live in, there is a lot more expectation that a woman is willing to lose herself and lose her identity and take on the identity of homemaker, mother, and wife, and have that be that. And I just want to be clear, if that is what you want, I want it for you. If that is what you genuinely want, no shade at all. I'm not trying to shade any woman's choices ever. What I'm saying is the fact that it is so often an expectation placed on us that we are no longer autonomous, no longer free, no longer, resting, and instead devoting our entire identity to our families and to our children. That has never sat right with me, has never been something that I've ever been okay with. And I just want to say, to me, for me, the balance that I've been able to strike has been because I have 1 kid. I wanted a child. Now I have 1. I'm so happy I do. But 1 is the number of children I can have and still lead the life I want to lead, because I am choosing her and choosing me. And I do feel like we have been taught as women that you're not supposed to do that. Once you have a child, once you start a family, that needs to be the priority and the only priority. And I just quite simply don't believe that. And I think if I tried to live up to that expectation, not only would I be worse off as a person, but I'd be a worse mom. I would be resentful. That would hurt my child. It would not help her for me to have more kids because that's what other people are expecting me to do. That would hurt her because the resentment would build up and just like the mental angst from not doing the things that I know I want to do and need to do. And I just don't know that that gets focused on enough and gets spoken about enough. And again, is another reason I'm making this video. Like, I've spoken about this, as I've said, on TikTok and other channels, but I wanted to deep dive into it because I just don't know that I see this point of view spoken about enough, which brings me to just some of the general thoughts that I want to make. Because one thing I was surprised Professor Bay did not bring up in her video, but has been brought up to me many times, is this idea that by not giving my child a sibling, I am harming her. that is probably the number one thing I've actually heard spoken. So what I think Professor Bay did a great job of teasing out is like all of the unspoken reasons people are expected to have and women are expected to have more than one kid. But the spoken reason that comes up the most is you should give your child siblings. They shouldn't have to grow up alone. They should have built-in friends. They should have people that, teach them how to play sports or model for them how to be good, have good manners or be good role models. They learn how to share. They learn how to, fight and argue and come out better for it and so on and so forth. And all of these things that, by the way, I do believe that my sisters helped me learn. I'm a middle child. I have a big sister and a little sister. I love them. Okay. Just to be clear, I love my sisters deeply, deeply, deeply. And so there is the spoken reason more often than not that people say you should have more kids is you should give your child siblings. So I want to dive into that because surprise, surprise, I deeply disagree. First of all, this idea that siblings are inherently good. It is inherently a good thing for someone to have a sister or a brother. I disagree with. First of all, there are a lot of people who are not close to their siblings. There are people who are born as sociopaths, narcissists, murderers, right? Like, are you arguing that giving your child a sociopath sibling is necessarily and inherently a good thing? I don't buy that, right? And so in and of itself, birthing another human does not automatically mean you are creating a better scenario for the child that you've already got. It just quite simply does not. You're rolling the dice. Yes? Two, the idea that having a sibling, even if you have the best version of a sibling, okay, so they're not a narcissist, they're not a sociopath, they're good, they have good manners, they're kind, blah, blah, blah. The idea that having that person in your life makes your life, again, inherently better than someone who doesn't have that, I take issue with that, because what are we saying is better, right? The person who didn't have a sibling had their parents' full attention all the time. Never had to compete, never had to feel the way I sometimes felt, right? Which happens all the time with siblings, that my sisters were the favorites, that I didn't measure up to my big sister who was like the smartest brainiac, that I wasn't as pretty or as beautiful as my little sister who was always super skinny and she had lighter skin and she just was always the cute, pretty one. She still is very cute, very pretty. And I always felt like compared to her, I was the troll. If I were an only child, those are feelings I wouldn't have felt. Now, I'm not wishing that. Again, I love my sisters, but the point is this idea that it's inherently and definitely better to have that experience versus having an experience where you are your parents' sole focus and you are not feeling like you are being measured against some other standard in your own household and potentially failing at that standard in your own household. Why isn't that inherently better? Right? I don't think either is inherently better or worse. I think we're talking about different paths, different journeys that work for different people. But what is often said is that the sibling path is inherently better. And again, I disagree. The other thing I would say, and this honestly for me is the most important thing, even if I knew, and I want to say this and I want you to hear me say it, even if I knew that my child would love having a sibling, would love every minute of it, would never feel like she was being negatively compared to this sibling, only ever felt love, joy, loved learning from this person or teaching this person, because obviously she'd be the older sibling, even if it were only a positive experience for her, that still would not convince me to do it because her joy does not outstrip mine. The importance of her joy does not outstrip the importance of my joy. The importance of her well-being does not outstrip the importance of my well-being. The cost to me of having another child is too great. It would not be overshadowed by the benefit to her of having a sibling. And that is something I feel like I don't hear enough people say. And so I want to say it plainly. If I knew she'd have a good sibling experience, it would not be enough for me to give her one. And that is important. I think that perspective is important. I think it's important to say out loud. I think it's important to confirm and validate in other women because, again, of the expectations that are put on us. And I just would like to be one person who contributes to knocking down some of those expectations, questioning them, turning them over and saying, it doesn't hold up. I'd like to contribute to that because I really and truly feel like my life is fuller because this is a decision I've made. Again, not trying to make that decision or push that decision on anyone else who doesn't want it. Just trying to make space for it and make space for us to hold it as a very valid and worthwhile decision. Anyway, that's it for this video. It got a little serious at the end. I'm okay with that. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, let me know in the comments. And as always, if you like what you're seeing, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you next time.